Just enjoy and listen to, and have a fun of it.
Hello and welcome to Story Radio Station. Just have fun with us as we dive deep. I'm your guide, Dexter.
And I'm Claire, here to explore the story with you.
And today, we are jumping straight into a really fascinating global powerhouse, K-Shipbuilding.
Yeah, we picked this because, honestly, the news coming out of the Korean shipbuilding industry lately, it's been pretty fantastic. Really strong operational results.
Definitely. And you hear about these huge potential growth factors, things like MASGA.
Right, MASGA, that's the Mega Asia Shipping and Global Alliance. Think a massive collaboration needing enormous new ships. Plus, there's talk of U.S. Navy MRO business.
MRO, maintenance, repair, and overhaul.
Exactly. Getting that kind of work really shows the level of technical trust they've built. It's significant.
So looking at all that, you might think Korea's shipyards just sort of cruise to the top spot on calm seas.
Well, that's the picture, isn't it? But we know major industries, especially ones this competitive, don't get dominant without facing some serious storms.
Right. So that's our mission today. Did they just sail through? What crises did they actually overcome to build this technical super gap everyone talks about?
And critically, what strengths keep them ahead of giants like China and Japan right now? Let's try and unpack that whole journey.
That was good. Where do we start? The beginning, I guess.
Let's do it. To understand where they are, you really have to look at the foundation, their ascent. Okay, so the real kickoff for the Korean shipbuilding industry, you trace it back to the 1970s, it was really driven by the government's big, heavy chemical industry policy.
And this wasn't just like a general industrial plan, was it? It was very specific.
Oh, absolutely. It was a clear select and focus strategy. The government basically decided shipbuilding would be a core export engine for the entire country, highly intentional.
But what's interesting is reading how the companies themselves, people like Daewoo at Okpo and Hyundai and Ulsan, they were already thinking big.
They were. Even kind of ahead of the official policy push sometimes, they were aggressively building these enormous dock facilities. Huge scale, right from the get-go.
And that early focus on sheer size, that connects directly to why Korea dominates the market for the really massive high-value ships today, doesn't it? Like VLCCs.
Precisely. VLCCs, very large crude carriers, that early ambition laid the groundwork.
Yeah, so ambition is key. But you can't talk about Korean industry without mentioning the big one, the 1997 IMF financial crisis. That must have hit shipbuilding hard.
Oh, it was brutal. An existential threat, really. It forced this incredibly painful restructuring, shedding assets, cutting back, dealing with years of, let's be honest, overexpansion and debt.
Yeah, tough time for the whole economy.
But something unique came out of it, this characteristic people call resilience. It wasn't just about surviving the crisis. It was about learning, correcting weaknesses, and actually emerging stronger, leaner, more focused.
Well, the kind of hard-won resilience. It feels like it prepared them for what's happening now, these massive global shifts.
You mean the D&D trends? Absolutely.
Right, D&D. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. D&D is decarbonization and digitalization. First, decarbonization, this is huge, driven by IMO regulations.
The International Maritime Organization, pushing for cleaner shipping.
Exactly. Which means a surge in demand for low-carbon or even zero-carbon ships. Think vessels running on LNG, methanol, ammonia, maybe hydrogen down the line.
And that plays right into Korea's strengths, right? Their experience with complex, high-tech ships.
Perfectly. Decades of expertise. Then there's digitalization. This is almost a survival strategy.
How so?
Well, facing labor shortages, which we'll get into, yards need to become way more efficient. So they're racing to build smart yards using AI, robotics, big data, and paving the way for autonomous ships eventually.
So these trends are creating demand that Korea is uniquely positioned to meet. Is this where the technical super gap comes in? Can we actually measure that lead?
We can, and it's significant. Looking at overall shipbuilding tech, studies show Korea holds about a 5.2-year average technical lead over China.
5 years. That sounds substantial in tech terms.
Yeah.
But is it across the board, or are there specific areas where it's even bigger?
Oh, it gets much bigger in the really high-tech stuff.
Yeah.
For LNG, LPG carriers, liquefied natural gas or petroleum gas, that gap stretches to about 7.0 years.
7 years. Wow.
And wait, for complex marine offshore plants, things like floating production units, the gap is estimated at a massive 8.3 years.
8 years. So China's basically competing with Korean tech from, what, the mid-2010s in those sectors?
No.
Why LNG specifically? What makes those ships so hard to build?
It's the extreme precision required. An
Sure.
LNG carrier is incredibly complex. You're basically building a giant thermos that has to keep natural gas liquefied at minus 163 Celsius while moving on the ocean.
That sounds challenging.
It is and demands decades of hands-on experience, incredibly specialized welding techniques, intricate cargo containment systems, fail-safe safety features. It's not something you can just replicate quickly with investment alone.
Which explains why Korean yards managed to corner, what is it, over 80% of the orders for these high-value ships?
That's the current figure, yes. Their experience creates this deep protective moat around that high-end market.
Okay, that really paints a picture of their technical dominance. We're going to take a quick breath here. When we come back, we need to look at the competition, who is trying to challenge that dominance, and maybe more importantly, the hidden crisis brewing inside K-Shipbuilding.
Good evening, and welcome to the Story Radio Station, where we explore tales from around the world.
Radio station. We're diving deep into K-Shipbuilding with Dexter and Claire. Just before the break, we talked about how Korea built this amazing technical lead, especially in complex ships like LNG carriers, really riding those D&D waves.
Right, that technical super gap is undeniable, but, no lid is safe forever. In this part, we need to look squarely at the competition, the global big three, Korea, China, and Japan, and then we need to talk about what might be the single biggest threat they face, and it's not external. It's internal.
Okay, let's start with the competition. When you look at just pure volume, the numbers are kind of startling. China dominates market share, right?
Oh, hugely. In terms of global order volume, China's share was around 70% recently, I think, for 2024 figures. Korea was closer to 17%. Big difference.
70%, so game over.
Not so fast. Volume isn't everything, especially profit margins. If you look at overall competitiveness, sort of scoring everything, if Korea is 100, Japan is very close at 99, and China is further back at 88.
Okay, explain that breakdown. Why 100 for Korea?
Because they lead where it counts for profit. High technology, complex vessel production capacity, good after-sales service, strong brand image. They're focused almost purely on those high-margin ships we talked about.
And Japan at 99. That sounds incredibly close. What's holding them back?
Japan's quality is excellent, no doubt, and they have this very stable structure, these long-term partnerships between ship owners, shippers, and shipbuilders. Very solid. But they have a really severe aging workforce problem, and they struggle with design capacity for anything outside standard vessel types. Their growth potential feels, well, stagnant.
Okay, so that leaves China at 88, but still grabbing 70% of the orders.
Yeah.
That must boil down to price.
Almost entirely. Price is their main weapon. They get massive government support, often not very transparent, and their labor costs are just dramatically lower, roughly a quarter of Korea's.
Wow, 1/4.
Yeah. So they can offer standard ships, bulk carriers, medium-sized tankers for about 10% less than Korean yards. They play the volume game.
But you mentioned their lower overall score. So despite the volume, they still struggle with R&D, build quality issues sometimes, maybe a weaker brand image.
Exactly. Those things mean they can't just throw money at the problem and instantly close that, say, 8-year tech gap in offshore plants. It takes more than capital. It takes accumulated know-how.
Okay, so the external competition is fierce, especially from China on price, but maybe manageable given Korea's tech lead.
Yeah.
So what's this internal crisis you mentioned, the bigger threat?
Yeah, this is the really worrying part. The most immediate severe threat to K-Shipbuilding today isn't China or Japan. It's the collapse of their own skilled labor ecosystem. It's an implosion from within.
And this goes back to that other crisis, the one in the mid-2010s.
Precisely. Triggered by those disastrous bets on offshore plants just as oil prices crashed. The big three shipyards, HD Hyundai, Samsung Heavy, Hanwha Ocean, which used to be Daewoo, they had to launch these massive self-rescue plans, over 10 trillion Korean won combined.
Huge numbers. And that involved cutbacks.
Massive cutbacks. They cut about 20% of their physical facilities, but critically, they shed around 30% of their workforce. 30%.
Ouch. So it saved the companies financially back then.
It saved the balance sheets, yes. But it absolutely hollowed out the skilled labor pool. Experienced workers left the industry, many never came back. And that created the deep, chronic labor shortage they're facing right now, just as orders are booming again.
So the irony is they're flooded with orders for complex ships, but the very people with the skills to build them aren't there in the numbers they need. We're talking about the core experienced Korean workers.
Exactly. The highly skilled long-term employees, often called bonggong in Korean, they are the absolute bedrock of quality, especially for complex projects like LNG carriers. Their share of the workforce was almost 60% back in 2023.
And now?
Estimates suggest it might have dropped closer to 50%, maybe even less. It's a significant decline.
So who is filling those gaps on the shipyard floor?
It's a mix. A lot of indirectly employed subcontractors, sometimes called volume teams or Muliang Tim, who are often paid by the piece, not focused on long-term skill building, and a rapidly growing number of foreign workers.
How rapid is that increase?
Some estimates put the foreign labor percentage as potentially approaching 40% of the total shipyard workforce now, maybe even higher in some areas.
40%. Wow, so you have this fragmented structure.
Deeply fragmented, and often characterized by that rigid hierarchy, sometimes called gapule in Korea, a very top-down relationship between the main contractor and subcontractors. This whole situation is incredibly dangerous for long-term competitiveness.
Dangerous.
Because it directly undermines quality control. It hinders the transfer of those critical, hard-won skills to the next generation. And it dramatically increases the risk of vital shipbuilding technology leaking out, perhaps to competitors who employ those same workers later. This internal decay, it's genuinely eroding that technical super gap from the inside out. Hashtag conclusion and strategic outlook.
Okay, so K-Shipbuilding is in this sort of golden time right now, technologically speaking, riding the D&D wave. But underneath, the foundation, the skilled workforce, is crumbling. That's a stark picture.
It is. And it means they absolutely need a clear two-pronged strategy to try and lock in their current lead while they still can.
All right, strategy number one seems to be doubling down on technology itself, right? The Smart K-Yard initiative.
Yes, exactly. This is the countermeasure against both China's lower prices and Korea's own labor shortage. It's a massive push for digital transformation.
Using AI, robots, big data, essentially automating as much as possible.
That's the goal. Revolutionize the shop floor. And the target is really ambitious. They're aiming for a 10% reduction in overall production costs through this smart tech.
10% cost reduction.
Well,
that's significant. Is the idea to become price competitive again, even on simpler ships, while also needing fewer human workers?
That's precisely the idea. Offset the labor shortage and regain some ground on price.
Okay, that's prong one, technology. What's the second part of the strategy?
The second is about structural stability. Learning, perhaps, from Japan's stable model, even with its own issues, the government is trying to foster a healthier, more stable cycle between shipbuilding, shipping companies, and finance.
Creating a kind of virtuous circle.
Right, a shipbuilding, shipping finance, mutually beneficial cycle, as they call it. The aim is to avoid the kind of destructive, cutthroat competition and wild overordering that caused some of the past crises. If Korean shippers, using Korean finance, order from Korean yards, it builds a more stable domestic foundation.
Makes sense. Build structural safeguards against volatility.
So those are the strategies. Smart yards for efficiency and cost, and institutional stability for the long haul.
Okay, so wrapping up, K-Shipbuilding clearly leads technologically, capitalizing brilliantly on decarbonization and digitalization. But if technology, like the smart yard, is one major answer, and we agree skilled people are essential, what happens if that smart yard push doesn't quite hit that 10% cost target? Or if it's not enough?
Well, that really brings us to the absolute crux of the issue, doesn't it? Even if they do hit a 10% cost reduction. Remember, China's raw labor cost advantage is still way bigger than that, maybe closer to 75% cheaper overall labor.
Yeah, 10% doesn't fully close that gap.
Not even close. And the technical super gap itself, especially for things like LNG carriers, relies so heavily on that deep human expertise. That ingenuity you can't easily automate. If the only workforce solution long-term is importing temporary foreign labor and relying on these fragmented subcontractor teams,
then that unique Korean know-how, the core of the advantage, could just fade away, dissipate.
It's a real risk. The skills might not get passed on effectively. The quality could subtly decline over time.
So the really provocative thought to leave everyone with is this. Is the current battle truly about the advanced ships K-Shipbuilding is launching today? Or is it actually about the highly skilled shipbuilders they seem to be struggling to cultivate and retain for tomorrow?
Which outcome prevails there? That could well determine who rules the waves for the next few decades. It's a critical juncture.
A fascinating and complex situation indeed. Well, that's been our deep dive into the rise, the resilience, and maybe the hidden crisis within K-Shipbuilding. Thanks for joining us on this exploration.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. And hey, if you have a topic you're curious about, do let us know.
Absolutely. And finally, if you enjoyed this, please do hit that subscribe button, give us a like, maybe turn on notifications. It really helps us keep bringing these stories to you.
Until next time.
I'm Dexter.
And I'm Claire. Thank you.